You guys remember when Tesla justified that the Cybertruck was not going to have like a 500-mile range and a huge battery because they wanted it to have better driving dynamics, and people valued that over a big heavy weight and a lot of range? Yeah, I remember that too. And then they added that thing in the trunk that they later canceled. Long story. But then GM said, wait, hold my beer, because we're going to do it anyway. They decided that they would do a couple vehicles with a 200 kilowatt hour battery, including this one behind me. This is the Cadillac Escalade IQ. I think it's the biggest and heaviest vehicle I have ever tested, 9,300 pounds. But what you get out of a massive battery is a massive range. Actually, the longest range I've ever tested in an electric car. So maybe people do want that. So I remember when they announced this thing, this Escalade IQ, and I remember seeing it in person, and now that it's actually on the street, God, living with it, it is truly a living room on wheels. Like, this is everything you'd want from an electric Escalade. And that's actually something I've been saying for a while about certain cars. Certain vehicles are perfect to go electric. Oh, you want something that's massive and luxurious and soft and quiet, and you don't really care if it's extremely heavy and maybe a little pricey? Okay, the electric one will be the best version ever. Sound familiar? So yeah, similar to the Rolls-Royce, yeah, this is totally fine going electric, and I think it's the best Escalade ever. This might be the official Uber Black of New York City in like 2 or 3 years. So the specs you probably care about: 205 kilowatt hour battery. It's an 800 volt architecture with 350 kilowatt peak charging. It's dual motor all-wheel drive, and it will do 0 to 60 in like 4.7 seconds in max velocity mode, thanks to about 750 horsepower with the press of a button. And it's about 130 grand, and Cadillac is quoting 465 miles of range. I'll say that again, 465 miles of range. And it's funny, I've seen even better numbers on the dash, because the dash in this car as you're driving, it's very responsive to how you drive. So you could stomp on the throttle and it'll just drop 5 miles off your range. But if you coast for a while, it'll go way back up. I've seen 500 miles quoted in this car. So on the outside, it looks like an Escalade. It also kind of looks like a Mega Lyric, like a bigger version of an Optic or a Lyric. You've got this big Cadillac logo at the front here, in front of the front trunk. This nice blue paint, which will match the blue interior I'll show you in a second, but the DRLs and the headlights and all this fancy Cadillac grille and some real intakes. You get around to the side, and again, scale is kind of hard, so maybe it's a good thing we have this little car back here, but these are 24-inch wheels with Michelin tires. And a little bit of, plastic to help the aerodynamics. And this thing cuts through the air well enough to get as much range as it does. You've got side indicators, big mirrors. You've got a little bit of a sloped back too. So this is something a Lyric also did. And you have these big lights on the back. So I think it kind of, it looks like a Mega Lyric, basically. And then you've got that Cadillac logo at the back here, which, yes, always opens the trunk when you've got the keys in your pocket. And there is a good amount of trunk space even with all 3 rows up. And since we're here, I might as well show you. These are power folding 3rd rows. Both of them will fold down, and power returning, which is just so nice. And you can see the blue leather, so we'll get there. But what else do you think about when you think about the Escalade? Well, you probably think about a big, soft, luxurious driving experience. So if I just hit that button here, the door will open for me. Yeah, it's lowered thanks to the active air suspension. It really likes beeping, but I'm gonna put my foot on the brake. It's gonna close for me. Nice. This feature is really funny because it can and it loves automatically opening the 1st and 2nd row doors, but it opens the doors really fast. So I'll do another example here. If I just pull this handle, it like throws the door open real quick, which is nice. It's convenient. I can get out now. But if there's a car parked next to you, that can be a little bit scary. Put my foot on the brake here again. Thankfully, there are sensors in the door that control how far it opens. So if there is a car parked next to you, it'll throw the door open till right next to the car next to you, but it never hits it. At least so far, it hasn't hit it for me. And then if you want to control it on the screen, you can obviously do it with this as well. Very luxurious feature. Again, Uber drivers are gonna just be getting 5-star ratings left and right with this thing. But once you get in, yes, you are greeted by a very luxurious cabin, especially for the driver here. It's got this big soft steering wheel. It's heated. It's got the lights on top for Super Cruise. It's also a 52-inch display, or at least a set of displays that totals roughly 52 inches in front of you here. So this display behind the steering wheel, obviously. This second screen over here is all of your Google services. So it doesn't have CarPlay, but it has the Google Play Store, it has Google Maps, so you can drop in Spotify or Waze or whatever else. You can drop the maps in really quickly. It's very responsive. That's a large display for that. And a third passenger display over to the right here, which only this person can see when I put it in drive, because it's polarized and it flips it on, and this just looks black to me when I'm driving. So that's really good. And also any media that's playing over there on those apps and all that Google services stuff only plays through headphones, so that person through Bluetooth can hear it, not the car speakers. Then a bunch of great trim. I mean, the blue leather that I told you about, these are ventilated and heated and massaging seats, and they are really nice seats. There are speakers in the headrests, and then obviously a bunch of bolstering and support, and really nice, I actually think the ventilation is very nice. It goes all the way up your back. So this is a great place to sit. Only a minor complaint from me, so this screen in the middle is very useful, and then there's just a whole bunch of piano black that just gets tons of smudges and fingerprints, and every car that has this, I complain about it. I don't love it. But there's some room behind here to store something. Wireless charger for your passenger, cooled wireless charger for the driver, massive center console storage, which is where I have my NACS adapter with 2 USB-C ports, 2 cup holders. This is good stuff. But the living room on wheels experience continues here because, like I said, this is a 3-row SUV. Soft closed doors. Actually could go way softer than that. But there's your second row. Ingress and egress is great. There's a lowered suspension and a little stool there. I get in and I've got a screen right in front of me. I've got plenty of leg room with some storage here. Again, a massive center console, at least in this 7-seat setup here. So you've got 2 wireless chargers. You've got trays just like an airplane. You can close the door. Nice. And you still have these speakers in the headrest, so they don't skip out on luxury in the second row at all. And there's just so many speakers in this car. So I might as well talk about it now. This is an AKG sound system, which I don't hear a ton of, but I think this might be the best sounding AKG sound system I've heard in a car. This has got great cabin isolation. It's very quiet in here. So as you're driving, you know, you basically only hear the speakers, the suspension, and the tires do a good job of minimizing road noise. And yeah, a lot of speakers in here, including the ones behind you, and there's really good sound. So I'm impressed by that. And then behind me is the third row. So not as much room, but still plenty for a third row. You often don't think of a third row as being particularly roomy, but the whole point of a massive wheelbase and a huge Escalade like this is you're actually gonna fill the seats with adults. And you can do that here. There's less headroom, and even though there's vents, there's not as much, sunroof doesn't go all the way back there, so it's obviously not the best experience, but as far as 7-seaters go, pretty good. So I'm gonna get back to the front seat because driving this thing is the other important part of the experience. If you're gonna spend 100 grand and ride on 24-inch rims, you're gonna want things to be pretty excellent. There's a soft closing demo for you. And it turns out they are. Now, again, I cannot emphasize enough how massive this vehicle is. Okay, I'm used to things like the Lyriq or the R1S or other 3-row SUVs. God, it likes blinking a lot. And driving in this, I'm looking down at the roof of those other SUVs. This is really high off the ground. This is really wide. Actually, some things I noticed about how big this vehicle is. First of all, this mirror is nice to have because if you're trying to see behind you just with the actual typical mirror, there's not a ton of visibility. So having the actual camera instead of a mirror is super useful. But then I don't like this mirror over here on the right. This right mirror, you know how they typically are a little bit convex or concave or whatever, and they say objects in mirror are closer than they appear. This one doesn't do that, so it still has the blind spot indicator, and if there's a car in your blind spot, it'll tell you by lighting that up. But it takes a lot of adjustment, and I still really typically have quite a large blind spot right here behind me and to the right in this car. Now, thankfully, if I throw a blinker on, actually I must be in drive, I'm pretty sure. If I go into drive and I throw the right blinker on, it will show that blind spot. So if I'm driving and I want to see if there's a car over to the right there, Make sure you hit that blinker because you will see probably a car sitting there that you didn't know was there. But I thought that was odd, that that's a pretty far-reaching mirror for some reason that doesn't show the entire side while you're driving. But again, you know, you get to driving this thing and you get used to it, and the experience is exactly what you'd expect. Very, very soft suspension. The air suspension is incredibly adaptive. It lowers to let you in the car, it rises up when you start driving, and it keeps things real soft, really isolated from the road. You might go over a pothole and not notice with a 24-inch rim. That is crazy. And again, the range is crazy good. So I've had this thing for a week and I have not charged it. I've driven it every single day, Monday through Friday, commuted, run errands, groceries, shipping with UPS. I don't know how many miles I've driven, but it is pretty crazy to get down to like 50% battery and see that you still have 250 miles left of range. So pretty impressive stuff. And on top of it all, it can be pretty quick. So there's drive modes. If I go over here, I've been mostly driving in tour mode just because that's, I think, the best setup for this thing. The suspension is pretty soft. Steering is pretty soft. There's not a whole lot of dynamics. You're not trying to feel the road. But there is sport mode, and that does increase the power quite a bit. And then there's a V button here on the steering wheel. If you hit that, you see this little V thing light up. That unlocks VMAX mode, which is 750 horsepower, which even though this weighs 9,000 pounds, that's still quick. This thing is way quicker than it has any right to be. Not sporty, just quick. Passing quick, entrance ramp quick. So if you're into that, you can have it. But really, this is just about cruising around. This is just about not feeling anything on the road and kind of dominating the entire lane you're in, because that's how massive this vehicle is. And then some other little things about this living room on wheels. This is a button to open the front trunk. And I want to show you something about the size of this enormous front trunk here. Come take a look at this. The front trunk is so big and so deep that if you don't have long arms, you can't actually reach all the way back there into the front trunk. So they've included this nice little tray so you can actually slide out and reach the thing that got moved all the way to the back of your front trunk. Obviously, if you accelerate, things can shift around. If you got groceries in here, this is clever, because this massive front trunk can actually hold a bunch of stuff. And then this is a truck that also has four-wheel steer. So the rear wheels will turn as well as the front ones to really help this massive thing pivot around its axis. So while it is huge, and it never, ever stops feeling huge, when you're in a parking lot or like a K-turn type situation or like a three-point turn, it actually does a really good job of it has a tight turning radius, which is nice. So yeah, pulling into chargers, pulling into parking spots, it is at least maneuverable in that way, but you never don't feel like you're in a huge vehicle, which is honestly probably what a lot of people driving this want. People want to be high off the road. But like I said, I expect these to be giving rides to people quite a bit, just as much as they are owned by people who just want to drive a big thing. But yeah, let me know if you're into absolutely massive vehicles like this. Me personally, I think I would take something like the Volvo that we just reviewed, because it's just as quiet inside, it has better speakers, it still has 3 rows, it has an awesome premium interior, and the software is amazing, and it's just not as huge and doesn't have as big of a range. But maybe you want 500 miles of range. Maybe that customer that Tesla kind of doesn't believe exists actually does. Let me know if that's you. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Peace.